guys, it's Christine with My Confection Obsession, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a baseball hat cake. So the reason I'm making this cake is my husband went to the University of Miami and he's a huge fan. And so we actually are going to be going to a game this season, and I wanted to make a cake to kind of celebrate that. And so I decided to make it shaped like this hat that he wears all the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to make the bill of the hat. This is actually the part that gave me the most trouble. In complete transparency, I actually tried this like 3 different times, and this is the only way I could get it to work. And so what we're gonna do is I'm actually using the real hat because I wanted the exact shape of the bill. And so we're gonna put this on white paper, and what I'm gonna do is I'm actually flattening the hat down, and I'm gonna trace around it like this. I'm gonna place this, line up exactly with the hat, and I'm gonna press in to make this line. So after I cut it out, I'm checking to make sure that it's the right size. And that looks pretty perfect, so I'm gonna go with that. And then, so I have this template to use for my fondant when I'm ready for it. But the second part of this is I'm actually going to use that same template, and I'm gonna cut the shape out with cardstock. And so I'm using cardstock because it holds its shape a little bit better. And what we're gonna do is we're actually going to put this on our cake board, and I'll show you a little trick. So for this cake, you do need a pretty big cake board because you're gonna fit your whole hat on it, so I know this is a good size. And what I'm gonna do is I'm using the cardstock piece that I made, and I'm gonna tape one end down, and then I'm gonna slide my hat under and fold the template over and then tape the other side down. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that bill shape like this. Like, I didn't want to make a flat hat, I wanted it to look realistic. And then from there, I'm just gonna stick some supports. And so this is actually just hardened fondant under here, because what's gonna end up happening is I'm going to cut out a piece of fondant over this, and I wanna make sure that it's supported when I do that. So I've seen other tutorials to make hats, and what they recommend that you do is that you cut out the fondant using the template, and then you actually lay it over the bill of the hat to let it dry. And I actually did try that, and I tried it 3 different times, and I could not get it to work. It kept cracking and it wasn't drying correctly. So I thought this would be a better way to actually just have the fondant bill already on the cake board, and it's gonna dry exactly how I want it. And I'm not gonna have to move it too much, because I found when I was moving it, that's when it was breaking. So this is gonna give you a better outcome with the bill of the hat. So I have that ready to go, and next I'm gonna focus on the cake. And I did this first because I wanted the measurement of the bill so that when I carve my cake, it's gonna actually be a perfect measurement, and I know that it's gonna fit correctly. What I have is I have an 8-inch cake layer, and what I did is I actually trimmed this down to make it 7 inches in diameter. And the reason I did that is because this hat, my husband's hat, is actually like, it's a size like 7.5, and 8 inches is obviously too big. So what I did, I went on the internet and I found a template for a circle that is 7 inches, and I used this as my template to cut around my cake, because I know this is going to fit in nicely with my hat. And so that's why it's really convenient to have our little template here already, because I know that's gonna fit. So 8-inch cake that I trimmed down to 7 inches using a template, I just carved around it. So I have that ready to go. And then for the top of the hat, this is an 8-inch dome cake, and I know I'm gonna have to carve this down. So from here I can see as I'm building my cake. So I have this here, and then I'm gonna place this on top, and that's a little bit too big. So I know I'm gonna have to carve this guy down. So I actually had this cake in the freezer for quite a while. Freezing cakes is nice. It keeps them really fresh. It actually keeps the moisture in. And then I find when you're carving cakes, it helps hold the shape a little bit better. So it's not completely frozen, but I took it out of the freezer probably like 2 hours ago, so it's still pretty hard. All right, so now I'm just going to use my 7-inch circle, and I'm gonna start carving around here. And then carefully take just a little bit off the top. What I'm doing is I'm checking to see if I like the measurements, and I can see my hat is a little bit lopsided, so I'm gonna fix that. If there's like any little bumps or anything like that, because I can just fill it in with some icing. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the whole thing with chocolate icing. So now I've crumb coated the whole base of our hat, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this into the freezer for like 20 to 30 minutes to really harden it up before I cover it with fondant. All right, so my cake has come out of the freezer and it's firm to the touch, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover this with fondant. So what I'm using is just my homemade marshmallow fondant recipe, which I'll put in the show notes. So I'm just gonna roll this out and cover our cake. So next what I'm going to do after I have my cake covered is I'm going to divide it into 6 separate sections. So you can see the hat has these like 6 little compartments. So I'm using actually unscented floss here, and I'm just going to go across and gently press in to leave a line. And I'm just gonna score it lightly. So I'm going light because I don't want to actually like scratch through the fondant. So now I'm just using my stitching tool to go alongside the line. So I do want to move my hat onto my cake board so that I can see it next to the bill to see if I need to adjust anything. So I'm just going to use my cake lifter and move it. So I do have a little cake board under here. So I have my hat on my cake board, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my template that I have and I'm just going to adjust it to where it looks how I want it to. And then I'm going to make sure that I put that fondant under here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna cut out the brim from fondant to add my bill. So now what I want to do is I want to add my U and my button here, and I'm going to clean the whole thing up. Actually, before I do that, I do want to use my stitching tool to add the seam to the bill so it looks realistic. Using my Wilton dab and hold. so my hat cake is complete and I think it turned out really well. It was a challenge, but everything ended up coming together really nicely. One thing to note is I am waiting for my fondant and airbrushing to dry, and then I'm gonna pull the supports out from underneath the bill so that you can't see them. And my airbrushing does need to dry just a little bit more, and when it does, it's gonna have a really smooth finish and it's gonna be perfect. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel below. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter.